Hello everyone, this is Vladimir Silva. Sorry, minor problem. Hello everyone, my name is Vladimir Silva. I'm the head of the IVF lab at Ferticentro, Coimbra, and we're here on this live broadcast to talk to Andreia Trigo. She's a very known nurse that works, Portuguese nurse that works in the UK in the IVF field. Hello, Andrea. How are you?
Thank you so much for inviting me to be here today, Vladimiro.
It's always nice to be with you, Andrea. It will be a pleasure to talk to you about IVF, about the current situation, what's happening in the UK, what's happening in Portugal as well. And obviously, we will not only talk about COVID because I think everyone has had it for quite a few weeks, but we will especially be talking. We will also talk about your work. This will be a mutual interview. You will ask me questions, I will ask you questions. We will share this video afterwards so everyone can watch it. This
Brilliant.
is maybe not the best time for everyone, but so let's take it from here. So, Andrea, the word is yours. How's everything in the UK?
Well, things are starting to get better. I think over the last few weeks, we have been talking a lot about managing emotions, which we'll talk about today as well. Because there's a lot of worry, there's a lot of anxiety, and a lot of people have had their treatment stopped or postponed. Sometimes there's not a lot of communication and people don't understand why, or there's no way of them to feel supported, informed, or hopeful for their future. So it generates all these feelings. But we've had the notification last week that clinics may start applying to reopen on the 11th. So I think that has given everyone a bit of hope. I think in Portugal, they're also starting to open, aren't they?
Yes, here actually not all clinics closed. It was not legally required to close the clinics. The CNPMA, the Portuguese IVF Authority, they said that it was up to the clinic's director to decide whether the clinic should stay open or not. For example, in our Coimbra clinic, we were only working in some urgent cases, while in Porto, we ended up closing the clinic for a few weeks. But last week, both clinics have resumed their normal activity, obviously with a lot of cautionary measures, from recommendation from health authorities. So everything with a lot of contingency measures in place, but we're back. We're no longer postponing treatments because of the COVID. All of the scientific evidence that we have so far is very reassuring. And so based on that, we are very comfortable to start and resume all treatments that have been delayed because of this.
And have you noticed that your patients have been maybe a bit extra anxious during this waiting time?
Yes, it is. Well, it's actually very interesting because, as you know, we work with a lot of international patients. And, well, even today, nobody's traveling. I mean, the number of flights coming into Portugal is very reduced, though we expect things to change in the upcoming weeks. But so, I mean, we had dozens of people getting their treatments cancelled and postponed because of the virus, and we've been in contact with all of them. And the first thing that I noticed is that everybody talks a lot. When I call patients,
Yeah.
it's very easy to spend an hour and a half on the phone because I don't know, people just don't stop talking. We're very happy to talk to them, but usually they say, okay,
Yeah.
it's fine. So,
I think that's something we've been finding in this recent webinar I did for Merck with so many clinics from all over the world. I said you need to over communicate. That's what people are expecting in times of crisis. And I gave this example of, for example, a pilot in an airplane and they notice that something is going wrong. And the first thing they do is they grab the microphone and they say, "Oh my God, we're going to crash, and I don't know what to do." So that's how we communicate in a crisis. Our patients will not feel, they might feel informed, but not supported or hopeful. So what I was saying, you need to over-communicate. You need to show them, this is how we're going to support you. We are here along the way with you. So talking a lot with them, I think that's a brilliant approach that you've been having. And I think they appreciate it as well.
Well, yeah, I do agree with you. And what do you think in terms, and because you're on the other side. We work in different sides of the same process. You're more on the patient side, and when I say on the patient side, I mean following the patients, talking to them, feeling their emotions while going through the waiting or maybe even through the process. So how do you see it? What do patients expect from us in times like this when we don't know exactly what?
Patients expect that they expect for you to inform them and to over communicate. It's like almost every day, you know, like governments are going live to the nation and saying something every day. Sometimes they don't have anything new to say.
Yeah.
It's just showing up, showing your face and say, I have the authority and I have a plan. So you can feel secure and safe and hopeful for your future because I know what I'm doing. And I know for clinics, it's also really a challenging time for clinics, and everyone is really scared. But just showing up as a leader and that you have a plan is really important for them. And I think for patients, what I've been reminding them is that every time we see something that is new, that is ambiguous, we don't have any previous experience to fall back on, or something unpredictable, we get anxious. And they have already experienced that just for going through fertility treatment. Something completely new for them, and it's unpredictable. It may or may not work, and they don't have any previous experience with it. And they developed some coping mechanisms already. So this pandemic is extra hard on our patients, but they already have something they can build on to be able to cope with it. So it's that bit of hope that I've been trying to share with everyone.
Yeah, and I think that's very wise of you because, well, first of all, what I've been telling patients about this is this. First of all, we're postponing. We're not canceling. This has obviously this could impact some borderline patients, the ones that are on the very limits of their fertility window. In those cases, I would say, luckily, things have changed in the past few weeks, and so HFEA has authorized clinics to reopen. In Spain, where the situation is very serious, clinics are now open again. So, what we are saying, what we can tell patients is that things are going to be better, and postponing is not denying the dream, that is not a sign of what can happen next. On the other side, I think we can use this period of pause, because this is a forced pause, to prepare and optimize the process. I always tell patients, so we have to, first of all, in the case, for example, of donation treatments, there are bloods that need to be done. There are ultrasound scans, previous. They can even one very simple thing, but which is which is at the same time so important. Start taking the pill. This could seem like nothing, but it is very important to program the cycle. It will reduce the stress of scheduling treatment, because what I'm anticipating is this, for example, people searching for treatments overseas. There will be, in the UK, for instance, there will be a moment where traveling will be possible again. And so they all will start running to the airports. No, it's impossible. I mean, you need to wait at least a few weeks to have your womb prepared. And so we would need 20 days minimum to have the lining ready to receive the embryos. And so in those cases, if the patient is already under the pill, we can do what we call the retro planning, like stating what's the best date for you to travel. And then patients will say, well, according to my vacations, to my job, to my personal constraints, the ideal time would be July the 22nd, let's put it this way. And so we can say, if you want to be receiving the embryos on July the 22nd, you should be well, we can, you should, really sorry, this was a patient calling. I will, well, let's keep trying. As I was saying, we have to tell them we can schedule the treatment accordingly. I'm very sorry. I have patients' calls coming in. I will just text the message if you don't mind.
That's
yes, if you don't mind. Well, this is an informal talk, but because otherwise patients might think I'm ignoring them. Yeah, it's and
the waiting time is also perfect to get your body and mind ready. That's something that I have also been telling patients, because you want to be at your peak health. That's what I usually say. So if you have this option of having had a few weeks when you didn't have treatment, maybe you have been working from home, you have a bit more time, maybe you can cook a bit healthier, maybe you can exercise even if it's at home, mindfulness, or join some online groups, and just do so many things and so many activities just to make sure that you are at the best possible health, so that when you go ahead with treatment, then it's more likely to result. So I think having a plan for the time off possible is a great approach as well.
Hello, Andreia. So thank you for holding the communication, but well, sometimes it's complicated because patients, I mean, you all need answers, they all need answers at this very moment, and so I just texted, and I will get back to her as soon as we finish talking. Well, anyway. As I was saying, it is very important to have treatments very well scheduled, and so things can run smoothly, because it's an extra source of stress to have to rely on the period date and then to get a compatible flight. And then, I mean, if we can organize everything, it gives you a sense of control over the process. And so I believe that we can, I mean, there's not everything is bad from this pause. So we can use this extra time that we're having. First of all, in some patients, for example, I'm actually receiving a text from another patient that in this particular case, what she did was, what we told her was just this: let's monitor your natural cycle. Because in this particular situation, well, it is a patient who has tried with hormonal replacement cycles and with previous failures, and so in a natural cycle, we're getting much better results. So she's at home, she's relaxed, she's working from home, she's controlling her ovulation, she's giving us all the indications, things that can be done from home. And we've actually found a perfect a moment which I think looks pretty fine for the embryo transfer to take place. I mean, she went to do an ultrasound scan after identifying the best moment, and her endometrium has never been better. So, I mean, this is obviously the psychological effect on this is very important, and also because things are running smoothly. We can work with, I mean, patients at the same time, they can have a sense of control over the process, because when we are on our daily routines, everything has a lot of pressure. Patients are calling, they need an answer 5 minutes later, they want to book, they are sometimes even booking flights online while talking to us, and they are asking questions like, what do you think I'm going to land in Porto at 5 and then be in Coimbra at 6 and so on. I mean, we've all slowed the pace, and so it has an advantage in treatment scheduling and so on. So not everything is lost.
It's almost like a mindful IVF.
It's sort of yes. I was actually talking to a patient from France today. She, I mean, she was in preparing to receive the embryos. We have created 3 embryos for her, and she was planning to do the frozen embryo transfer here in an egg donation cycle, and her treatment got cancelled because of the coronavirus issue. And now she called me today, and she was saying, well, as you know, in France, things are very complicated. It's going to probably be the last country leaving the lockdown. But she was telling me, I'm actually not worried. If I want to start on my next period, then if we cannot fly, I will drive my car. Okay, because I feel safer inside my car than inside the plane, and so. It doesn't mind if it takes me 2 days to get to Portugal. I will just go by car, and we'll spend a week there. And well, actually, we've had patients who have done that from France. So it's really interesting, because people who previously were so rushy and running and so on, and right now people are coming from France by car. I mean, it's a completely different way of looking into this.
And do you think that even after everything goes back to normal, there will be some changes in the way the clinics run or the way patients face treatment that will be forever different?
Well, I think what we all learn, we've all learned a lot as a society from this. The first thing that we've seen in this last few weeks or let's say a month and a half is this. We were it's like we were giving everything for granted. You know, everything should happen exactly the way we were predicting, and there was no other way to see that happening than what we were expecting. And now we have seen that things could change, okay? And sometimes it is just out of our hands, and there's nothing we can do about it. At the same time, so we should be prepared to deal with uncertainty. I mean, even if you are starting treatment today, I mean, Portugal opened today. The lockdown was a little bit released today. And so, but the government 1 or 2 days ago, they were saying that if things go wrong, the lockdown will be back. And obviously, we all know that. And so it's possible that someone is starting their treatment in the UK, in France, and so on, and there's a new lockdown even in their own country, or here, or somewhere else. We actually don't know, but we need to work to use some tools, some clinical tools, working with frozen embryos, different kinds of protocols that give us more control over the dates and over the clinical processes, and that's an important issue. And another thing that's also, that I believe it's changed forever, it's the way that we see the world, because when you're spending time at home and you're seeing the world collapsing around you, because that's the feeling that we all had. I mean, if you go out to a supermarket here, everybody's wearing a mask. It is required by law to wear a mask. So you feel like you are on those apocalyptic movies where, okay, so you look around you and everybody's wearing a mask. If for some reason you scratch your nose and someone will give you the look like, what are you doing, mate? You know, put your nose back on. I mean, everybody, when you're living in this sort of apocalyptic moment, you start thinking about your life. I mean, what do you want to do? What do you take from home after all of this mess, all of this confusion? And then it's probably when people think about building a family, being with their own. I mean, it can work both ways. I mean, you can also say, I don't need to go through IVF. Okay, or the other way around. It's important for me. What I really want in life is to build a family. So let's give priority to this, because in some cases that we have here, we were receiving emails. I mean, here when the patient asks us for information, we provide the information, and then the patient replies or not, and we were receiving replies to emails that we have sent 2 or 3 years ago. So it's patients that were at home thinking about that and remember 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I was exchanging information with this clinic, and so it's time. And we have noticed is that they didn't do any treatment anywhere. They were just abandoning the idea of having a child because they were prioritizing other aspects in their lives. But it comes to a moment when you have to look into yourself and say, is this what I really want to do? Am I okay with this? And so this is I think that's the most important change, because if a vaccine is announced in 2 days or 3, 6 months from now, we would all have forgotten this and nobody else will. But maybe on the back of the mind, there's this. Things can change from a moment to the other in ways that we have never imagined to see in our lifetime.
Yeah, I think it can be a big trigger for even single women who were maybe waiting for the right man to start the process and grow their families, and maybe say, well, maybe I can have treatment with sperm donor and just go ahead and get what I want. Or even for couples, either couples who are at home and realize they cannot stand each other, or they are the right person to have a child with. It can go both ways.
Yes,
but
it is.
Most people have been reporting, the patients I've been talking to regularly, they've been saying this has actually been really good for our relationship. It's been good for my health. I'm cooking a bit healthier. I'm doing more exercise, even if at home, just with YouTube videos. So most people are being able to pull through, and then it's just the anxiety of the unknown. But with clinics like yours communicating with patients on a regular basis, I think it's good. I think it will be a good outcome for most patients at this time.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also, just to let you speak a little bit as well. So, Andreia, the reason because why we invited you is because we find your work very interesting. First of all, because we don't have usually in Portugal this kind of activity. This is
Yeah.
something that we have in the UK. Again, sorry, this was another call. This is something that we have in the UK, that we had in countries such as Germany, Switzerland, the Netherlands, France. We deal with international patients, and a lot of people are seeing fertility coaches and taking care of the psychological effect. But I mean, what do you do? Let's tell patients, let's explain how things work.
So my focus is usually on maximizing your options by improving your physical health and your emotional health. I believe that if you're not in the right place mentally or physically, then treatment is less likely to work. And I think for a lot of people, it's really hard to make changes. I think we've all been there trying to maybe eat a bit healthier, follow a diet, lose weight, and it's just really hard. So it's like a personal trainer for your fertility journey, and you get the support regarding your emotions, and it might be, for example, emotions within yourself, with your partner, how to have really challenging conversations, how to make really difficult decisions, because sometimes couples don't want to try the same treatments or how long to try them for. And then it's about the nutrition, physical activity, and all the environmental aspects, because there's so many things that I think doctors don't communicate with patients that have to do with, for example, the products that we put on our bodies, for example, makeup, shampoos, body creams, the products we use around the house, all those things that have BPA, phthalates, and other toxins that maybe removed can mean that you produce better eggs, better sperm that you as an embryologist can work with.
Yeah.
And better eggs, better sperm is a beautiful baby. So that's how we work. It's together, focusing on specific goals that people have and working very closely with clinics to maximize patients' chances.
Okay.
And I think during this time, the big thing has been the emotional support, basically. We've increased our workload, so we're running weekly support groups, which are free for everyone to attend. And we're running lots of webinars and Insta Lives like this.
Let me, sorry to interrupt you, Andreia, but let's tell everybody how can they reach you
Yes.
in order to enroll in those programs and webinars and so on.
So on Instagram, I am Andreia Trigo RN, and my website is andreiatrigo.com. So we have stuff happening almost every day of the week for the past month. Very tiring, but also very meaningful because people really, really appreciate it. So you can find me there, and I'm more than happy to include you in all of these free events. And maybe it's just what you need to feel a bit motivated, confident that treatment is going to work, and feel a bit supported and hopeful.
Okay, perfect. And just to get more, to get a better understanding of how it works, is the privacy of the participants protected? I mean, if someone wants to assist, but without being noticed, because, you know, infertility is sort of a stigma associated, and so
Yeah.
how does it work?
So here on Instagram, it depends if you have a specific fertility account, and there's a lot of people who do that. I have private fertility accounts on Instagram, and then they have their normal account. So if you watch our Insta Lives through your private account, that confidentiality and privacy is met. And then you also have the patient support groups that happen on Zoom. And on Zoom, you are allowed to have your camera off, and you are allowed to have your name off. So you can just put your initials, or you can just write something completely different. Usually we have between 8-10 people on our support groups. We have people a bit from all over the world, which is interesting. Not everyone shows their face, but it's usually regularly the same people showing up. It's a bit interactive. People tend to use the chat box on Zoom quite a lot. And they've noticed, oh, I feel that way. I also feel that way. So there's an interaction which is quite interesting. And people 2 weeks ago suggested, if we all feel the same way, let's create a WhatsApp group. So now there's that as well, which is a way of people to interact during the week as well. But I think it's all about what works for each individual person, because some people might want the professional support, others might really want the peer connection of others who are going through it. But it's all available, and everything is free, and it's just for people to feel a bit supported and in a time that they need the most.
Okay. Another question: do you think men react differently than women? I mean, in those support groups, are there men and women, only women, 50-50? What do you think?
Great question. So mostly women, but there's usually men in couples. So sometimes it's a couple joining from the same computer or from the same phone. And men usually cope differently with everything related to fertility. Women usually talk a lot, and they like to analyze things and ruminate on things. And men just feel it a bit more internally, don't talk a lot, but they are usually willing to do everything that it takes to help the woman get pregnant. And so if an exam is required, or if they need to go to an appointment, men will do that, but they will just not talk loads about it. But in the groups, there tends to be couples and single women, and they do talk and they do share. I think there's a trend over the last few years to see men more involved, which I think is quite good. Because when you're both committed in the process, I think it's more likely to work. That has been my perception.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I agree in everything. We men, and now I'm speaking on behalf of my percentage of the society. That's not something you talk to your mates in a pub while having a beer and say, you know, man, I know my sperms, my sperm count is low. So you see, it's not something that the man is used to do. We prefer to keep it to ourselves, so it's very nice that they are participating and feeling involved in that.
Yes, but we need to talk more about these things. There was this Portuguese initiative. I'll tell you all about it after.
Yes, please.
This Portuguese initiative where we ran a series of webinars, and one day was specific for male factor. And we had 100 people registering, and we had people asking lots and lots of questions about male fertility, because it affects 40% of cases. So it's still a lot of people.
Yeah, it's incredible, in fact. And another question, Andreia. In your programs, let's say a patient wants to enroll in one of your paid programs. How does it work? What can you describe, let's say an example, a case example, so patients can understand what can you do for them, how it works, especially how much time does it take for them from the moment that they start talking with you until the moment they are ready to start treatment, and so on.
Question. So usually we say that it takes about 3 months if we want to be like super perfect, because it takes about 3 months for all the changes in our lifestyle and nutrition to be reflected in the sperm and in the eggs. So it's not like we can make changes today and then you'll notice it tomorrow in a sperm analysis or in your egg quality. So if you want, the longest we do it for, the better it is. So if you start today, 3 months is that ideal period. And what patients usually have is access to the online platform 24/7. And we have 5 modules with key behaviors, key modifiers that have been proven by research that affect fertility. It's a traffic light system, so we have behaviors that are really, really important and behaviors that research says they're somewhat important, and then things that don't matter at all. And then we have really useful information. So we have these 5 modules, and you have access to videos, the audio recordings, text, and you'll see which ones you should be focusing on depending on your specific circumstances. And you can use the content for a whole year, as much as you want at the time that you want to use it for. And then we have, every month you have access to one-to-one consultations with me or with a psychologist. And that allows you to make sure that the changes you're making, that you stick to them. Because let's say I want to eat a bit healthier, but if I don't tell anyone that I'm doing it, I'm less likely to do it.
Yeah.
So you have someone to be accountable for the change that you're making. And it's also an opportunity to maybe interact with your partner and a third person to manage difficult conversations. So once a month you have that option. And then you have the weekly groups, which is the time when you interact with other people. So this is what we've been doing, and it's our baby, my baby, because I believe that everyone in the world should have access to fertility support. So we are in this mission to try and reach as many patients as we can to have access to this online platform.
No, this is great. I was actually remembering a lot of cases that we had that are interesting to share here. I remember, just to talk about stress and so on, I remember a case of a couple. It was more than 10 years ago, but I've always remembered that because I've actually going to tell you about 2 cases that are very emblematic. Yes. The first one was a patient. He was a teacher, and it was a female infertility, a female cause like tubal blockage or something like that. And the man did a sperm collection. It was me who did the sperm analysis, and it was normal, everything okay. So let's move on with treatment. So it was, we're talking about 2009, 2010. So back in those days, vitrification was not as good as it is right now. Well, it was maybe before that, maybe 2007, 2008. That's when you realize you're getting old, because it was before egg vitrification, and we started that in 2009, so it was before that. So anyway, but this guy had a normal sperm analysis, and so we went to treatment. But on the day of the egg pickup, we got like 10 eggs from his wife, and then he went to the collection room, and he wouldn't believe it, and so he wasn't able to do the egg collection. Because it was so stressful. And so then his wife went on, she woke up from the anesthesia and she went to talk to him, and the guy said, I just can't. It's absolutely impossible. And then we said, we'll wait as much as we can. We've even removed other patients from, because that area and other clinics personnels, to give them more privacy, even in terms of sound and so on. We told him, don't worry, we're not in the lab waiting for you, okay? Just we'll be back there. Just call us when everything is ready and so on. And he didn't manage to do it. And it was absolutely incredible because so we called a neurologist. We did a testicular biopsy, an emergency testicular biopsy, an aspiration, because there was no other way to get some spermatozoa. The spermatozoa that we got were horrible, because we're talking about the man with normal spermatozoa, and then in an aspiration it is never as good. We did a mixie and they didn't get pregnant. Then they went to do a second attempt, and I talked to them, and I said, you have the whole morning for you, okay? You go in there, we haven't scheduled anything else. You just go in there and take your time, and we will freeze the sperm. Like 2 minutes later, they said, it's okay, it's done. Okay, so it's the importance of stress. And the sample was normal, and then we used it, and they got pregnant immediately. So this is a story with a happy ending. But at the same time, it shows how much stressful can this be for this patient. We're talking about the person who spent a whole afternoon. It was like 4 hours in there, and there was a moment where we couldn't do anymore. We called the urologist and so on. And another case, it's very interesting because it's a man who had no spermatozoa, and so he was azoospermic, and we did him 2 testicular biopsies and 2 TZ procedures, and always without any spermatozoa. And so we went on with donor sperm. They got pregnant, they had a baby, and then 2 years later, 2 years after having the baby, the guy showed up at the clinic and said, and asked me, "Hi, Vladimiro," we became friends. He said, "Hi, Vladimiro, do you mind if I do a spermogram and a sperm analysis?" And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" He said, "Hey, come on, please let me do it." And I said, "Well, no worries. Since you don't have spermatozoa, it wouldn't be much work for me." We were joking, obviously. And then he did it, and he had like 7 million spermatozoa per milliliter. And I was obviously very concerned because, could I have made a mistake? Because he went from 2 clinics. He did the procedure in the clinic, and then he did at Ferticentro as well, and it was blank. We were absolutely positive. I was reviewing the registries, and then I talked to him and said, "Well, I don't even know where to start, but you have 7 million spermatozoa per milliliter, which is half normal, but I don't have an explanation for this." And he said, "Well, I do have an explanation. The truth is that I've never told you this, but when we were here and in consultations, I was an alcoholic. I was an alcoholic, and I never told you. I was drinking like a bottle of whiskey a day or even more." And so he said, and then when we had our baby, it changed my life, and I decided that I shouldn't drink anymore. I'm sober for a year and a half, and I just got curious to see what effect would this have on my sperm. And then I said, "Well, it's incredible. Now we have an explanation, because we all know azoospermia is very common among alcoholics. We also know that his blood tests were very compatible with an hypophysis suppression caused by alcohol. So everything was explained. But then I said, well, let's follow this up and do you a sperm analysis every 2 weeks. And so we started doing it. And every 2 weeks he went back to the clinic. And in 3 months or so, he was at 200 million spermatozoa per milliliter, which is tenfold, which is 10 times more than the normal. Okay, more than 10 times above normality. And then his wife was 41, and back then I asked her, they were planning to have a second child, and we said, well, there's no need to do this with the donor again. And then we did it, and they got pregnant, and they had a very unusual problem in the second trimester, and she miscarried. Then after everything was treated, they came back to the clinic, and they made me the most interesting questions. They asked me, did we still have straws from the sperm donor from whom their daughter was born? Unfortunately, we hadn't, and they said, then it's done.
That's
We don't want to do it anymore because if it was, if it was from the same donor, they were saying, we love our daughter so much, and the guy was saying, she changed my life, and so I'm so thankful to her that in having a baby with my own sperm just feels wrong right now. They were not in peace with that process, and they were saying like, if the donor is still available, we will use as many straws as we can. Because we do want to give her a little brother or a little sister, but I mean, this is how important the psychological part is. I mean, they were coping with the donation in a way, and at the same time,
with their own issues. Yes, I think that's quite common, and it's something that patients usually just don't talk about openly. If you have like a half an hour appointment when you're asking about everything else. So I think it takes maybe a few consultations for them to open up about what's really bothering them inside. But alcohol is a known thing to affect, just like steroids, ale. So there's lots of things that patients can do to improve their chances. But the emotional side, I think, can affect a lot, and stress. I've had patients who were so stressful, and I'm not saying stressful because I'm saying feeling stressed right now. It's chronic stress. When you have incidents in your life, a relative, a father or a mother has died, and you're still processing it, or you're caring a carer for someone else in your family, or you have job uncertainty. So when there's so many things that can play a part in your emotions, and if you have this constant worry, then I think your heart is not as open as it could be for the treatment to work.
Yeah, it's true. I totally agree with you. I was also thinking about asking you questions about donation, because a huge part of our work is with donations. We work with sperm donation, embryo donation, double donation, egg donation. I mean, we have all of that, and also here in Portugal, we have this. We've had this change in the legislation. We've moved into an open donor system, which it's been absolutely. Initially, I was against it. Okay, we've been working with anonymous donors. I wrote very angry texts on social networks, even in national TV. Well, I participated in some. I'd made some interviews and public interventions and so on, and so I was totally against it. Then when it started, it is absolutely incredible how important it is for patients to be able to give their child the possibility of having access to the donor's ID, which is a system that also exists in the UK. The problem is that they don't have donors, while we do have. Can you talk to us a little more about how patients cope with resourcing to a donor and so on?
I think there's some milestones in the journey. So when you first realize that things aren't working naturally, some people say, okay, I'll do IVF, and they accept that very easily. And other people might say, no, I don't want to try IVF yet. I want to try naturally for a bit longer. And then once you're in the journey, you are trying with your own eggs and sperm, and it's normal that you want to try with your own. So in the beginning, most people are a bit reluctant to try donation. But I would say that after a few months or after a year, something that wasn't an option in the beginning becomes an option, and people change their minds. So some common concerns are usually, will I feel attracted, and the connection and the love towards the child? And I usually say, I haven't met a couple yet who has had children via donation and then just say, I don't want these.
Yeah.
So I haven't met anyone who has said that. So that fear of not feeling that connection or that love with donor embryos, donor sperm, donor eggs, it's a valid fear, but we need to maybe speak to other people who have been through it and just to see your fear be demystified, and maybe it's not going to happen. I've seen some couples where they need, for example, an egg donor, and the wife feels, well, I don't feel comfortable having a child that is related to you but not related to me. So some couples go towards embryo donation. So it's not the genetic material, it's not from any of us, but it's our baby, and we're going to grow it inside my tummy, and it's going to be raised by both of us. So there's all sorts of fears that people can have about donation, but I haven't seen any regrets yet. So people are usually happy about their choices, and people are happy about having a baby. And once the baby is out in their arms, they are very happy to see similarities. And even if it's embryo donation, they see, oh, his smile is just like uncle or auntie or just like yours. So I think it can be difficult to go ahead towards donation, but people who do usually have a happy ending. That is my perception. Is that yours as well?
Yes, it is. Actually, there is also another part of this journey which I find very important, because it is when patients, because this happens to us all the time. The typical story of a patient who gets here is like, she's 44 or 42 or 43, her ovarian reserve is at the limit, so yes, we can still try, yes, her hormones are still working, but no, the odds are not good. And we're talking about, sometimes I tell patients, we're talking about 1%, 2% chances. I mean, I even tell them, picture a bag, a black bag with 98 black balls and 2 red balls. And so you shove your hand in, you put your hand inside, you mix the balls. How likely is it for you to get one of the red ones without seeing it? And so, but sometimes they just hold on to the 2%. They're saying it's 2, not 1, or maybe 3. No, don't you think? I mean, obviously, we can we can hold on to what we have, and we can always try, unless chances are 0. But what I tell patients most of the time is this: let's also think about the financial side of it, because if you just have the possibility of doing one attempt, are you betting all of your money in one that gives you 1 or 2% instead of one that will give you like 60% chance or even more? So why would you do such a thing? I mean, but obviously, some patients tell me things like, I have to see with my own eyes that it doesn't work, and then I would be ready to try.
You find that they want that last cycle with their own, just to get it out of their mind.
Yeah, exactly. So just to block that what if question that will always be on the back of their mind. So if I jump too early into egg donation, but there's no really a way to go around this. I mean, what can we do here? But sometimes they are just wasting energy and money and their emotions, and even physically it's aggressive because we have to go with very strong dosages. I mean, is there a way to
I don't think there is a way. I think as long as people are aware, and I think you explained it very well. I think that analogy with the red balls and the black balls is very good. So if people understand that it's very low, but if emotionally that's what you need, we'll do it. But you need to understand the consequences. And are you ready financially, emotionally, physically to go through this cycle with very low chances? And some people still want to go ahead. And I think if it gives them that peace of mind,
then we
you
should
just
do
need
it.
to do it.
Yeah, this is why this is another issue. It's more or less the same question with the PGTA, pre-implantation genetic testing for aneuploidies. I'm just explaining this to the. There is this test that we can do in the lab where we can create the embryos and then check them for chromosomal abnormalities. Those are usually age-related, so those are problems that come with that affect older women typically, and so patients sometimes ask us to do that, and they will say, will this improve my chances of pregnancy? And I always tell them, no, this is just about information, you see, because the embryo is the same. Medicine has not the capacity of transforming a bad embryo into a good embryo. So that doesn't exist. What we can know is whether this embryo has a genetically normal constitution in chromosomical terms, in terms of their chromosomal constitution. And so sometimes that's also important. It's just a way of putting like I don't know the word in English, amplifying what nature has to say. It's like going to a probe in nature to tell patients how things work.
I think when it comes to testing them, I usually say if you have like one or two, it's probably not worth testing because it is a lot of money, isn't it? And you can transfer one and just wait 12 days and then transfer the other one if needed. But let's say if a woman is like 38 and she has 10 eggs that have been fertilized, I think maybe that would shorten the time because you need to wait month after month after month to transfer them. So maybe that would be, is that something that you usually advise them as well?
Yes, obviously. I'm a big defender of PGTA, okay? But I always, because we need to have that information. Very recently, we had a patient from the UK, actually, and she was doing egg donation, and we had, if I'm not mistaken, 11 blastocysts, which is fantastic. But we transferred three of those in 3 different embryo transfers, and we came back with 3 negative results. And we tested the endometrium and other factors, and everything was fine. And then we had to ask for a special permission to do the PGTA on those embryos. And it turned out that of the remaining 8, only 3 were genetically viable. And so we transferred one of those, and she's pregnant now, and everything is fine. So, but I mean, we've saved. Maybe not. Maybe we would be able to choose the best embryo. But if we hadn't do it, that patient in the worst case scenario could have had 5 more negative transfers before having 3 positives. You see how random this is. Andreia, we're running out of time. There's the 2-minute warning. It's incredible how time flies.
Yes.
It's just to. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your initiative here in Portugal, so people?
Well, I'll tell you. It's for your Portuguese.
Okay. So
clients.
then we will not talk about that.
Right, but we've partnered with 2 other fertility patients there in Portugal, and we're trying to create some movement because, like you said, there's not many things going on. So, but I'll tell you all about in a text, and maybe you can do one of these in Portuguese for your Portuguese clients.
Obviously. So another. Well, we're finalizing this. There's no time to start a new subject. I actually have one more thing to ask you, but we'll leave that for the next talk.
Next week, something like that.
Yes, exactly. So, Andreia, it was really nice to have you here.
Thank you so much, Vladimiro.
Yeah, this video will be available for everyone to watch. We didn't have much people watching this live, but it's normal at this
Yeah.
hour. But the video will stay available in our stories. We will also share it on Instagram TV and in Facebook and so on, so everybody can watch it because it was really interesting. It was one of the most